Good morning and welcome to our midday briefing. And before taking your questions, let me present tomorrow's college agenda and the related press events. So tomorrow the plan for the college is to adopt an action plan against cyberbullying, which Executive Vice President Virkkunen and Commissioner Mikalev will present in Strasbourg around 3:30 in the afternoon. The college will also discuss an action plan on drone security and counter-drone security. And on this topic, a technical briefing off the record and under embargo will take place at 4:30 tomorrow in Brussels. Before the Executive Vice President Virkkunen and Commissioners Brunner and Tzitzikostas formally presented in Strasbourg on Wednesday at 10:30. So basically the points on the agenda planned for tomorrow will be presented both tomorrow in Strasbourg and then on Wednesday morning. So that's all for the college agenda, and of course we will as usual confirm these details as soon as possible via our usual channels. And that's it for our announcements today, and we can open the floor to your questions. Yes, please.
Yes, hi, thank you. Martin Anton from AFP. I have a question about an initiative of 6 economically strong member states, the so-called E6, Germany, France, and 4 others. How does the Commission see this initiative? Is it a rivaling project to the EU, or do you hope to gain anything from this initiative that wants to further certain European causes faster than the EU maybe could?
Can you elaborate on what exactly the E6 is looking into?
Yeah, they have a plan. They want to work together better on defense. They want to advance the capital market union and similar projects.
Okay, listen, it's not new that member states come together to coordinate their positions on different subjects. We've seen this on different topics, for instance, on migration. That's all good and legitimate that member states want to discuss, want to know where they are, want to possibly also coordinate. At the end of the day, the decisions are then taken at EU27. That's the decision-making process of our European Union. That's also what we will have, again, the opportunity at leaders' level as recently as still this week at the informal European Council, but very often indeed the topics are discussed previously among member states, and why not? Other questions? Oliver.
Hello. On sanctions. First, a knowledge lacuna you could hopefully help me bridge. How is the sale of ships to the Russian shadow fleet or to entities that don't have any clear economic beneficiary, how is that currently treated under EU sanctions? And secondly, on the anti-circumvention tool that you intend to use for the first time, I think the Deputy Minister of the Kyrgyz government said he's already reached out to Mr. O'Sullivan and he's hoping to sort of negotiate the use of that tool away. Can you give us an update on this? And secondly, how do you reach out to member states, especially to countries like Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, Italy, France, who've been selling massive amounts of CNC machinery equipment and radio equipment to Kyrgyzstan starting in 2022, which is an obvious circumvention of sanctions, because I don't see any big, with all due respect to Kyrgyzstan, I don't see this becoming the big powerhouse of machine building in Central Asia. Can you tell us what the Commission is doing with regard to the member states to put pressure on them to cut this down? Thank you.
Oliver, and I'll ask Siobhan to join us. But as a general disclaimer, so to say, as you know, this was the proposal put forward by the Commission last Friday. President von der Leyen presented it, indeed, in a statement that you may have seen. Of course, we cannot prejudge wherever we will be landing at the end of the day on this 20th package of sanctions against Russia. As you know, this is now being discussed with the Member States, and there could be obviously still changes, adjustments to this proposal. So just a general caveat before going then more specifically into your questions. Siobhan.
Thanks, Paula, and thanks for the many questions on the package. Of course, as Paula just said, we really cannot comment further beyond what was mentioned in the President's statement last Friday when the package was adopted by the College. Of course, when it comes to circumvention, this is the focus of the Commission's work with the Member States. In every package, we propose additional measures where we see that there are loopholes. This is a work that we do jointly with the Member States in the Council, of course. So, you know, I cannot go into detail of what's in this latest package, but of course it will tackle some of the circumvention that we have seen. And on the enforcement, of course, just to reiterate, the enforcement is always with the Member States. That is the way this works. There's nothing new about that. And they are the ones responsible for implementation and enforcement. So this, as with every other package, will still be in the hands of the Member States to implement. And there should be no surprises in that because, of course, the packages are always adopted by unanimity in the Council. So there's nothing that should come as a real surprise to them in terms of implementation. So I think we have nothing more to add for the moment on that.
Yes, Oliver, a follow-up.
Hi, thanks. Of course, implementation is with the Member States. It appears that a huge swath of the sanctions, particularly the anti-circumvention part of it, is not properly implemented because otherwise we wouldn't see all kinds of Western European-made electronics showing up in the remains of the drones and ballistic missiles that terrorize the Ukrainian people. Are you thinking about maybe starting infringement procedures against member states who are not properly implementing the sanctions policy of the EU? And secondly, my first question on the shadow fleet was unanswered. If I'm, for example, a Greek owner of oil tankers, I don't know what to do with them. I'd like to sell them to a friendly guy who says he would like to use it and not ask too many questions about it. How is this being dealt with? How is the sale of ships to the shadow fleet currently being treated under the sanctions package? And is the Commission satisfied with how member states are implementing this? Thank you.
Well, more in general, Oliver, we're taking the enforcement of the sanctions very seriously, and also the circumvention of the sanctions is being taken extremely seriously. And if you look at these series of packages of sanctions, that has precisely been the focus. We've been also learning from the various packages, learning and seeing, observing wherever there are circumventions, notably, and tackling those, right? We have an envoy, as you mentioned, also Mr. O'Sullivan, who's tasked and mandated to look into very specifically the enforcement and anti-circumvention of these sanctions, because obviously, as the sanctions are put on the table, there is, of course, attempt to circumvent it. So that's been precisely the focus of it. And what is also worth reminding in this context is the impact, the concrete impact, and many may be still circumvented, and you may still have issues of enforcement. But the fact is, if you look back, is alone in 2025, if you look at Russia's fiscal revenues from oil and gas, they have dropped by 24% in 2025 compared to the way before. And this will be the lowest level of revenues for Russia since the war began. Interest rates in Russia stand at 16%, and the inflation remains high. And this is a clear result of the enforcement of the sanctions. There may be also other factors contributing to it, but what is important to retain is sanctions are biting, sanctions are having an effect. Jorge.
Hello, Paula. Yes, it's also in the package of sanctions. The main element in the package is the full ban on maritime services for Russian tankers. I mean, if this is approved, the price cap on Russian oil will cease to apply within EU jurisdiction. There will be a full ban. And I remember that you were a very strong advocate of the price cap for a long time, you know, the unity of the G7 countries. So what reasons prompted this change of strategy? Have you concluded that the price cap was a failure, that it didn't meet the expectation and you need to do something else, something bigger and stronger? Thank you.
Thanks, Jorge, for the question. I unfortunately cannot share more detail until the package itself has been presented today in the Council, and I think we can provide more follow-up after that.
But it's clearly a strengthening of the sanctions, right, Jorge? I mean, until now, with the price cap, you will still have exports of oil. With this maritime ban services, any export of oil from Russia will be made even more difficult. So that's the logic behind, without going now further into details, but that's the logic underpinning this proposal. David.
Thank you. Two technical, David Carretta, Radio Radicale. Two technical questions. I hope you can answer to that. To them. On the ban on services, would you need the agreement of the G7 to implement it? Because it's in the statement it was not clear, at least for me. And the second point on the anti-circumvention instrument, what are the procedure should, after the proposal of the Commission, do you need unanimity in the Council? How does it work? Because it was adopted in 2023. I don't remember the technicalities. Thank you.
So on your second question on the anti-circumvention tool, I've been told it's a tool, not an instrument, and I think that's legal speak either way. On this one, this is part of the package. So the whole package will be adopted via unanimity in the Council, as is always the case with every package. Your first question, sorry, if you can just remind me what it was. I got a bit wrapped up in your second question.
The need for the G7.
The need for the G7. I think in this case, when it comes to any of our sanctions packages, we're always coordinating with our partners. We're always discussing. And that is just our modus operandi, whether it be with the UK, with Switzerland, you know, our partners are always, we're always engaging with them. I think I can't really say much beyond that for the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's another example where they will be more effective if implemented with the G7. As such, they do not need the G7, but they would be more effective, and that's why precisely we are working with the G7 also on some of these measures. Jorge, you had a follow-up. I hadn't seen it, sorry.
Yes, two questions. The first one on the price cap. The idea for the price cap was to maintain a stability in the global markets, you know, that Russia would be allowed to transport a degree of oil, but at the same time it would be denied another degree. So have these fears of markets instability disappeared from you? That's why you think you're confident that you can move on with the full ban? And second, when you talk about the G7, do you mean the G7 or the G6? Because last year when you turned the price cap into a dynamic mechanism, you did it without the United States. So it was effectively a G6 measure. So are you looking at the G6 as well this time? Thank you.
Ideally G7. We always try to go for G7. Jorge. And on the fears of market instability, when we put forward these proposals, we look into what can be possible impacts. So clearly there must have been changes in the assessment if we put this forward. And we will close with the sanctions here. Otherwise, we need a dedicated technical briefing on this, but we prefer to have that technical briefing when we land the package, hopefully very soon, with the agreement of the Council. Other questions to Siobhan? Not to Siobhan. And then let's move on.
Thank you, Paolo. Good morning.
Yes.
Henry Foy, Financial Times. I have a question about the Munich Security Conference. 14 commissioners are going to attend that on behalf of the EU Commission. I mean, could you tell me if the President believes that's a good use of their time and EU budget money for them all to be there, more than half the college? Thank you.
Listen, it's an important meeting, and you have better information than I do, Henry. I don't have the final list of commissioners attending, but there are several commissioners attending indeed. As you know, this is a moment where many leaders, many representatives at ministerial level gather from across the world. So it's an opportunity also to discuss beyond the program of the Munich Security Conference. There's the opportunity to engage, to discuss, to have bilateral meetings, trilateral meetings, and that's precisely how it's perceived by the members of the college who are participating at this conference. It goes beyond the conference in itself. It's really the opportunity to engage, to meet many leaders and representatives of ministries across the world in a single place. So it can be very convenient. Yes, Henry.
Yeah, just to follow up. I mean, do you think it's appropriate for your Commissioner for Agriculture and your Commissioner for Water to attend? There are no other ministers of water or agriculture going. I mean, why not send the Commissioner for Animal Welfare as well, just to make sure we're covered?
I trust that if any commissioner who is present there estimated that he should there, that he has very good reasons for that, and it is fully justified by his portfolio. Yes, there. Before we go into foreign affairs.
Thank you so much. Gianluca Martucci, Public Policy, Italian News Agency. I just ask a confirmation. The presentation of the drones and anti-drone security action plan on Wednesday is made by Virkkunen, Brunner, and Tsitsikos. So Kubilius is not there. Sorry.
Indeed, it's not easy to bring together when we're talking about more than two. Already two is difficult to reconcile the agendas of two members of the college. When it's 3 or 4, even more difficult. It doesn't mean that in this case Commissioner Kubilius is not also concerned. His views will certainly also be represented by his colleagues from the college. And indeed, the explanation here, it's very difficult to reconcile the agenda of 4 different members of the college on a single slot at a single and same place. Other questions? On va aux affaires extérieures, Noureddine.
Oh, sorry. No, allez-y.
Et la Palestine, si tu permets. On Sudan, during the weekend, dozens have been killed. My question to Eva, on a humanitarian level, if you have credible reports that who is responsible for this killing during the weekend on Saturday, I think, in the part of Darfur and other region in Sudan. Who is responsible for all these killings? Many reports are suggesting that RSF are responsible for that. And can Eva update us on what the European Union is providing as humanitarian assistance to the Sudanese? And I will ask my question on political level to Anwar later on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Noureddine. Regarding the attack, we have seen the reports on the convoy. It was a convoy of United Nations, and it happened on Friday. I cannot confirm who exactly was behind the drone attack, but what I can say is that this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable because it's against the international humanitarian law. And humanitarian workers, it's the same case like journalists, should be protected in any kind of crisis because they are not standing on any side of the conflict. and we always advocate for the protection of the humanitarian workers. By the way, last year was very severe and the deadliest year for humanitarian workers. Nearly 408 workers were killed in the world, and 120 out of them in Sudan. So we advocate for humanitarians not only in the framework of the United Nations, but we also finance Protect Aid Workers, which is a program together with NGOs which supports also workers who suffered some kind of an attack and need help. But let me reiterate that unimpeded humanitarian access in any kind of crisis is non-negotiable. If you ask about Sudan, recently I had a chance to listen to some stories from Sudan, and these stories are obviously terrifying. This is something what we can hardly imagine here in Europe. There are 30 million of people that are in need, that need the humanitarian aid, and there are nearly 10 million people that were internally displaced. If you speak to people who were in Chad and who talked to people who managed to escape from Sudan and get to Chad, they tell you that people in Sudan are killed on a daily basis. There are children who have no idea where their parents are. There are women who cannot even talk due to sexual violence that happened to them, and then they cannot tell these terrifying stories. This is why Sudan is a priority for us. Responding to this crisis, it's a priority for us. We have allocated a budget for this year for the whole region, which is more than 500 million, because we always allocate money for the whole region. In this case, it's inevitable, because we need to help the Sudanese, for example, in Chad. It's not only for help in the Sudan territory. Then we have organized 30 humanitarian air bridges, also land and sea bridge, and we have already transported 1,000 tons of aid to Sudan. Again, humanitarian access is a big issue in Sudan, so we call for access for humanitarian workers and international NGOs. In such a territory, we cannot operate without local workers who usually are being a target of the attacks. So we are extremely concerned about the crisis in Sudan. We obviously condemn all the atrocities that are happening there, and we remain in contact with our partners on the ground to get as much information as possible so that we can target our aid in this horrible humanitarian situation.
Okay. Other questions to Eva? No. Thank you, Eva. Now we come to you.
Sorry, I have a political question to Anwar on Sudan. It's complementing the humanitarian one. Thank you. My direct question to Anwar is, since the RSF are reported they are responsible behind these atrocities, European Union took sanctions against some leaders of this organization. Why the European Union is not listing the organization as a whole as a terrorist organization, since they are responsible for very, very serious crimes? But also politically, European Union has a strong relationship, whether with the region, whether with partners like United Arab Emirates, who is, it's documented that United Arab Emirates is providing directly arms to the RSF, and providing them arms via Libya, providing them arms via Chad. With all these countries, European Union has strong relations. Why the European Union is not persuading United Arab Emirates to stop supporting the RSF who are committing these very serious crimes. Thank you.
Anwar.
Yes, thank you, Nourdine. You touched on several points. I'll elaborate on these one by one, starting with the last. The EU has been discussing the situation in Sudan during its political dialogues and exchanges with the United Arab Emirates at various levels. In such context, the EU representatives have been raising concerns about the reported UAE support to the RSF and will continue engaging with the UAE as a member of the Quad on Sudan to reach a sustainable ceasefire and permanent resolution of the conflict in the country. Now, allow me to add to what my colleague Eva shared with you earlier on this podium to bring the foreign policy perspective also in terms of restrictive measures. In view of the continued fighting, the dramatic escalation of violence and violations of international human rights law and international humanitarian law at the latest Foreign Affairs Council, I will recall that the EU adopted sanctions against 7 individuals. The Sudan sanctions regime now applies to 18 individuals and 8 entities. In particular, I will recall as well that we adopted sanctions against Abdelrahim Abdan Dagalo, the second in command of the Rapid Support Forces. We remain actively engaged on the matter, including at the highest level, in terms of efforts to find a sustainable end to this conflict. And we will, in terms of perspective, continue to use the full range of foreign policy instruments at our disposal, including, whenever appropriate, targeted sanctions, to achieve a peaceful resolution to the crisis, because the culture of impunity in Sudan must end and those responsible must be held accountable.
Thank you for the compliment, Anwar. Noureddin, still a question. Yeah, you had mentioned, yeah.
Anwar, in the West Bank, ethnic cleansing is ongoing. Intimidation, terrorist settlers are terrorizing civilians with the support of the Israeli government. Settlements are being enlarged or creating a new one, building new ones. What the European Union is doing to persuade Israel to stop, because what's going on is really undermining the solution of the two-state solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Nourdine. The European Union condemns recent decisions by Israel's Security Cabinet to expand Israeli control in the West Bank. This move is another step in the wrong direction, while the whole international community is making an effort to implement phase 2 of the comprehensive plan for Gaza. These steps would impose new realities in direct contradiction with the Oslo Accords, of which Israel is a signatory, and whereby Israel has no civilian authority in areas A and B, which are under direct authority of the Palestinian Authority. The decisions would also risk directly undermining the Hebron Protocol between Israel and the Palestinian Authority and put at risk the sensitive status quo of religious sites. As for the EU, we have a long-standing position of non-recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the territories occupied by Israel since June 1967, in line with relevant resolutions of the UN Security Council. We recall that annexation is illegal under international law. Therefore, any concrete step taken toward that end would be considered a breach of international law. I will also be stressing here that the situation of the West Bank has been under our scrutiny, EU scrutiny, for a long time. Recalling that the measures that have been put forward by the President von der Leyen at the latest State of the Union, still on the table, come also as a consequence in terms of the actions in the West Bank undermining the viability of the two-state solution. In that context, we reiterate our unwavering commitment to lasting and sustainable peace in accordance, again, with the relevant resolutions of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, on the basis of the two-state solution, with the State of Israel and an independent, democratic, contiguous and sovereign state of Palestine living side by side in peace, security and mutual recognition. We will be continuing to work with international partners, including through the Global Alliance for the Two-State Solution, towards reviving this political process, reminding that a credible pathway to Palestinian statehood is a crucial component of that political process. And let's be clear, there is no other solution than the two-state solution.
Thank you. Other questions to Anwar? Yes, Odile.
On change de territoire, mais j'aimerais savoir, et le public européen, même dans les régions reculées de notre continent, se demande s'il y a une réaction de l'Union européenne concernant les négociations en Iran, pour l'Iran, entre les États-Unis et ce qui se passe à Oman. Est-ce que tu as une réaction là-dessus?
Pour ta question. S'agissant de la situation en Iran, je commencerai par rappeler qu'une escalade militaire risquerait d'avoir de lourdes, terribles répercussions sur la stabilité de la région. Et nous savons à quel point cette région a besoin tant de stabilité. Nous saluons la perspective de pourparlers diplomatiques entre les États-Unis et l'Iran, puisqu'il faut donner une chance à la diplomatie. L'Union européenne reste convaincue qu'une solution durable ne peut être trouvée que par la voie des négociations, c'est-à-dire de la diplomatie. Il est grand temps que l'Iran montre qu'il est sérieux dans sa volonté de répondre aux préoccupations de la communauté internationale, notamment en ce qui concerne le dossier nucléaire. Nous, Union européenne, restons fermement attachés à la paix, la sécurité et la stabilité au Moyen-Orient. Et il est essentiel que toutes les parties respectent le droit international, fassent preuve de retenue et s'abstiennent de toute action susceptible d'entraîner une nouvelle escalade au Moyen-Orient.
Merci, Anwar. D'autres questions pour Anwar? Yes, James.
Thanks, Paula. Thanks, Anwar. Just in light of what's happening in Israel, could you bring us up to speed on the latest proposals or the state of play when it comes to the EU-Israel Association Agreement? I believe there was a suspension or a proposal for suspension of Horizon funding at some point. I'm not sure where that is. And perhaps there are some other diplomatic components or trade components that you could talk about here. Thank you.
Thanks on your question. Let's zoom out again and let's assess the state of play and also scope of the measures that we are discussing here, because these measures came as a result of the unacceptable situation in Gaza in terms of the humanitarian catastrophe and the actions in the West Bank undermining the two-state solution and its viability, including the decision of the Israeli authorities to advance with the settlement plan, so-called E1, together with the latest decision of the Israeli cabinet. These measures are clearly not against Israel nor the Israeli people, but have been put forward to urge the Israeli government to change course in terms of their action in Gaza and also in the West Bank. In the meanwhile, we have seen that the context has changed from a diplomatic and political perspective, as you all know, looking at the President Trump peace plan, together with the phase 2 in which we are now in terms of implementing it. That being said, the situation on the ground remains also dire in terms of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and I will also here stress that the EU has been taking action with lately the reactivation of our civilian mission, EUBAM Rafah, which also aims at providing medical treatment to those who are in need of so, allowing them to actually leave the Gaza Strip to Egypt in the framework of the agreement that the parties are now implementing. Now, looking at the state of play, the measures announced by the President at the latest State of the Union are still on the table. We are following the developments on the ground with great attention, also recalling the statement I just made in terms of the latest that we see from the Israeli cabinet over the weekend. In terms of direction of travel, any decision on these measures will reflect the progress achieved or lack thereof in terms of peace and stabilization on the ground. So this is the state of play in terms of where we stand on the measures announced by the President at the latest State of the Union.
Good. And then we take final question on foreign affairs. Mose, before moving on to other topics.
Yes, thank you, Paula Musa for Pakistan. I have two brief follow-up questions. The previous questions. First on Sudan, Nordin mentioned the interference of Arab Emirates, which is providing obviously drones to one side to the RSF. But I read in New York Times recently that also Egypt, from a new airport in southern Egypt, is delivering drones which they acquired from Turkey to the government army. So I wonder if he also involved in a dialogue with Egypt, which it has a partnership agreement with Egypt about that interference, which is fueling the civil war. And then the other question, follow-up question on Odil's question on Iran. You mentioned negotiations, and of course the nuclear issue is very important, but another issue is also Iran's rearmament of ballistic missiles. And I would like to ask if you have a position whether that issue should also be included in negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mose. I'll start with Iran, and then we go back to Sudan. The EU continues to urge, and this is our long-standing position, Iran to comply with all its legal obligations, and this answers your question, under both the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement, together with restoring full cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. This message is being passed in all our contacts, as well as in international fora, including the International Atomic Energy Agency and the UN Security Council, last meeting being on the 23rd of December 2025. We remain convinced that diplomacy and negotiations are the only way forward to achieve a lasting solution to the Iranian nuclear issue. And the High Rep will continue to facilitate a negotiated solution in line with the resolutions of the UN Security Council, which have been reinstated. So this is our state of play in terms of the nuclear dossier in Iran. Now, going back to Sudan, since you asked in terms of where we stand, look, Mose, we have been also very clear in terms of any third party and party that is supporting the warring parties in Sudan. We have been reiterating, and this in multiple occasions, that the primary responsibility for ending the conflict in Sudan lies with the leadership of both the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces, and those providing them with direct or indirect support. And as the High Representative said herself at one of the Foreign Affairs Council that touched on the issue, the warring parties could not really engage in these atrocities if they would not have the weapons that their enablers are giving them. This issue is being addressed at ministerial level when the Foreign Affairs Council meets and discusses the issue. And member states had agreed to strengthen diplomatic outreach and raise the issues to stop this support in terms of any party that is being involved. We have been here urging all external actors, and I stress all external actors, to take necessary measures to end the sale or supply of arms and related material to all the parties as per the arms embargo that is being established by the UN Security Council resolutions 1556 and 1591. And we, as EU, will continue to advocate for expanding the arms embargo to the whole country.
Thank you, Anwar, for these comprehensive replies. And we move on to a different topic, no longer foreign affairs.
Actually, it's a foreign affairs, but a different region.
Different region. Let's change region then.
Let's change the region. It's a question about the Board of Peace of President of United States Donald Trump, which will have inaugural meeting next week. And I would like to know the position of the EU, of the Commission, to this Board of Peace. Is it invited? Will it participate, maybe as observer or as a member? And do you have the information about European Union member states who are the members or who will participate as the observers? And your position on this division of the European Union states on behalf of this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and on this I would invite Anita to... It's for you? Okay, Anwar.
That's why I stayed, otherwise this is a usual suspect for Anita, indeed. Look, our position on the Board of Peace... Yeah. Our position on the Board of Peace is very clear. And is unchanged. Happy to reiterate it here. We have a number of questions on a number of elements in the Charter of the Board of Peace related to its scope, its governance, and its compatibility with the UN Charter. We are ready to work together with the United States on the implementation of the comprehensive peace plan for Gaza, with the Board of Peace carrying out its mission as a transitional administration in accordance with the UN Security Council Resolution 2803. And we are engaging actively with the United States on how we can jointly reach this objective. But I would also refresh your mind on the issue, recalling the latest UCO conclusions that we had when our leaders met recently, calling on all parties to implement the UN Security Council Resolution 2803 in its entirety and in line with the relevant international and political legal principles. Again, reaffirming our strong commitment to the two-state solution in the parameters that we know and that I have been outlining to your colleague earlier.
Thank you. Very briefly, because we need to move on to different topics.
Very briefly. So the European Union is sending some envoy to participate in this board next week. Thank you.
Look, I don't have such information in terms of what you are putting here on the table, so we need to double check, but our position did not change. If we have anything else to add, we'll be happy to convey.
And we change topics. Razia.
Thank you. Razia Akoch, AFP News Agency. I have a question about competition. Maybe because it's Monday, I just wanted to get my head around it, because I understood the press release, but I just want to know concretely what would interim measures be. Would it be that the EU would block access to WhatsApp? Just to get a bit more meat on that, please.
Okay, so we're talking about a press release already from this morning. Yes, just to put everybody in the context of the question.
Good afternoon. I am making a very big effort today to stand next to Paula, because tonight is the Porto Sporting game and we are on opposite ends.
We'll talk about that.
So coming back to the point, today the Commission took the step on to ensure fair competition within the AI assistance market. And what that means in the press release you're referring to is that we've issued a statement of objections to Meta over concerns it may have violated EU competition rules by blocking third-party assistance, AI assistance from accessing WhatsApp. And based on the evidence we've seen so far, it seems that Meta may have shut out these assistants by enforcing a policy that favors its own assistant, namely Meta AI. And based on the evidence we've seen so far, we believe this can undermine the growth and diversity of such AI assistants in the European market. Now, our current intention is to impose interim measures on Meta. Now the company has the right to defend itself, and so the formal issuance of the statement of objection allows the company to activate its rights of defense and to present its case to the Commission. On what the interim measures would actually mean, I think that what we've identified is that there is a risk that consumers could be deprived of competition in this market, and we believe that now is the moment when new entrants to this market are still able to compete and to enter the market, and we fear that in a few years this possibility may have disappeared. And that's why we believe that interim measures are necessary, and in that sense the idea would be to ask Meta to maintain the access of third-party AI assistants to WhatsApp under the same terms as it did before the policy change until the end of our investigation on the substance. So there is really no talk whatsoever about preventing Meta from being active on the market as such.
Thank you. And this triggered other questions. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Edith Hancock with Dow Jones. Just to follow up on Brazier's question. So two things that I want to get clarification on your side on. Brazilian court actually suspended a move to impose interim measures on Meta by Brazil's antitrust agency over the same issue. And also something that Meta has proposed in interim measures in other markets is charging AI chatbots for access to WhatsApp. One, how concerned is the Commission that this may or may not hold up in court if Meta decides to appeal the interim measures? And two, what's your view on this, pay-for-play system that Meta's proposing?
I think maybe I'll start with the first question. How concerned are we? Well, at the moment we haven't taken any decision yet. So, I mean, I can't really speculate on something that might happen after we would have taken a decision, which we haven't yet. So at the moment we are at the stage of sending out a statement of objections. There's no decision even that in terms of going to court or anything. So I don't think I can really talk about that at this stage. In terms of whether there would be, I believe your second question was about payment, right? Correct? I think, again, we are really at the initial stage of the sending of the statement of objection. So now it's too early to comment on how Meta could potentially reply to an interim decision measure and then implement it.
Yeah. Let's see how the reply will look like. Yes, please.
Hi, Ricardo. Lewis Crofts, MLEX. Similarly, two questions. One, how important actually is this as a channel for distributing AI bots? I'm sure if people use them in this room, they'll probably use them as apps themselves or perhaps as services on their desktop. The bots have been able to be deployed on WhatsApp for several months before this policy came in. And the usage would imply, if you look at the Italian decision, hundreds or maybe a couple of thousand. So how important is this as a channel, and is it important enough for this kind of intervention? Secondly, the Meta's argument is that this system is made, its infrastructure, it's made to carry messages, not to carry the huge volumes that chatbots generate. What's your response to that? Thanks.
So I think starting with your first question on how important are they, what we have found based on the evidence we've seen is that Meta's conduct is likely to harm the competitive process in the market and not only individual competitors. And we believe that actually the AI assistants that are likely to be the most harmed by Meta's conduct are the smallest ones, namely the new entrants and startups in this market. And for many of them, WhatsApp is a key and a particularly efficient entry point to the market of the AI assistants. Our theory is that dominant companies should not dictate which market participants can and cannot be allowed to grow. And furthermore, I believe that the evidence we have seen shows that because of WhatsApp's strong reach in Europe, even already well-established players can be harmed by the conduct in question. Turning to your second point about the infrastructure and the issue of potentially imposing a burden on it, I think the evidence we have gathered so far doesn't really support this claim, but as part of the fact that we've issued a statement of objections, Meta now has the opportunity to have its say on the matter in response to the statement of objections, as well as in the context of the full investigation, which we will keep going in parallel.
Thank you, Ricardo. Other questions to Ricardo? No. Other topics that you'd like to raise today? I don't see any. Then this brings us to a close of our midday. Thank you very much. Wish you a very nice afternoon.